Hi beautiful, welcome to my channel. I'm back with another roundup ranking video, and this time I am tackling concealers. I tried a total of 15 new concealers in 2023, and as someone who is extremely picky when it comes to concealers, I must say 2023 was a fabulous year when it came to concealers, especially towards the end of the year. There were a lot of concealer releases that were absolute hits, okay? So if you are excited for today's video, give it a thumbs up and let's go ahead and get started. I have desert dry skin. I have lines that fold underneath my eye from just like the way my eye is shaped. Maybe I'm getting a little bit older too, but I definitely don't like anything to look enhanced or textured or dry when it comes to my under eye area. I'm sure that's everyone's preference, right? And so because I have very dry skin, I tend to prefer concealers that have very lightweight but still a decent amount of coverage so that they can cover my under eye circles without looking textured, without looking dry, and without them creasing. I believe that at least on my skin type, the thicker a concealer is, the creamier it is in some instances, the more it's going to tend to crease on me, because I'm going to set it with a light layer of powder over top, and underneath it's still going to crack. So the thinnest concealers tend to be the ones that tend to work the best on me. As far as finish preferences, I think I tend to prefer radiant finish when it comes to my concealer products. So let's start with the worst concealer I tried in 2023, and this was actually a concealer that I was raving about when I first tried it. You'll understand why in a second. On the 15th spot, I have the Bye Bye Dark Spots Corrector Plus Serum Concealer from IT Cosmetics. This one is supposed to work on dark spots, and it's also supposed to be a brightener for the under eye area, and it has a consistency that I absolutely do love. It has that thin texture with the beautiful medium coverage that sinks right in. When you set this concealer, it doesn't crease. It literally hits every single point I just made. And so you might be asking yourself, then why is this on the 15th spot? And the answer is very simple. I am allergic. I have to be allergic to one of the ingredients in here, which is unfortunate. And I believe it is whatever they put in here that helps with dark spots. As I have mentioned in multiple videos, if you are someone who watches my channel all the time, I tend to be pretty sensitive to specific vitamin C products. I can use some vitamin C products, but not all. It has to be very stable. It has to be a high quality vitamin C. Otherwise, it literally burns my skin, and that is what this concealer did. I had posted a short video slash a reel on Instagram on this concealer the day that I realized that this was what was making my under eyes burn, because I was blaming it on my eye cream. And so I had to like immediately take it down and be like, I hate it. I hate this. I cannot believe that this concealer burned my under eyes in the way that it did. The way I realized was I kept feeling like my under eyes were getting dry, and I thought it was the eye cream, so I stopped using the eye cream, but then the problem continued. And so one day I took a picture of myself with no makeup on, and I realized that the shape of the redness slash dryness underneath my eye was exactly the placement of my concealer. And so I realized that this was the cause of my under eyes literally burning. So for that reason, and that reason alone, this is definitely a no-go when it comes to concealers for me. And if you have any type of sensitivity to vitamin C or skin lightening products, as I truly don't know what the dark spot corrector is in here, I'm assuming it's vitamin C, because that is what I tend to be allergic to. Anyways, if you have sensitivity to that product the way I do, please stay away from this one. Do not recommend. At number 14, we have this one right here. This is the Vive Modern Radiance Concealer, and I had such high expectations for this one because I had heard wonders about it, but the reason I don't love it is because of the consistency of it. I find that it has a beautiful full coverage with a natural finish to it. It hides all of my under eye circles. It covers really well, but it creases on me, and it kind of looks a little dry on me throughout the day when I wear it for long periods of time. And I think it's because of the thickness of the product. As I said, I don't tend to love concealers that have a thick consistency. I'm gonna give you an example of a thick concealer that is very popular that I hate. The NARS concealer. I forgot what the name of it is. NARS Radiant Concealer maybe? The NARS concealer that's been popular for like a decade, that everyone loves and it's a staple for everyone. I hate it. It is too thick for me. It has a bit of a moussey consistency and it makes my under eyes crease. It makes me look much older than I am. And so that is a similar issue to the issue I had with the Vive one. I actually like the Vive one more than the NARS one, but it still has that thicker consistency that doesn't quite settle well underneath my eyes, and even after I powder it, it creases underneath my eyes, and so that is the reason this is number 14. At number 13, I actually have a NARS product, and it is this right here. This is the NARS Light Reflecting Eye Brightener in the shade Golden Eye. My main concern with this one is I really wish that they came out with more colors than they did, because they need a shade expansion on these. I know that they're supposed to be brighteners, but this looks very yellow on me. The other shade, very pink. It's a thicker consistency. It does not crease actually, even though it's a thicker consistency underneath my eyes. That's not the issue I had with it. It's the color range that's the main issue for me, because I don't want to have yellow under eyes. And then the second issue is the lack of coverage. Those are the main reasons that this is just not a go-to under eye product for me. I tried it, I wanted to love it, but I just end up always reaching for other products that are not this one. So maybe if they expand the shade range, I can find something that works best for me. But like I said, not a fan of yellow under eyes, also not a fan of pink under eyes, and so for that reason, this is just not a great under eye product for me. Okay, those last three were the ones that did not work for me at all whatsoever, and starting at number 12, everything else pretty much works. I just have minor complaints about them that made me rank them in the way that I did. So at number 12, I have a very popular concealer, one that I actually quite like, but it's just not my perfect under eye type product, and that is the Quickie concealer here, the Naked Quickie concealer from Urban Decay. I love the size of this one. It is massive. You get so much product in here. It is incredible. This one is creamy. It has a matte finish and a beautiful full coverage. I have mine in shade 20 NN, which is a bit too bright for my under eyes, but I can totally make it work. Now, the reason this one is not a top one for me is I prefer a concealer that has a radiant finish and a very thin consistency. This one has more of a natural to matte finish. I feel like it can sometimes make my under eyes look a bit too dry, and even though it's not too thick of a concealer, it's also not the thinnest. You definitely feel it kind of laying on top of your under eyes, and I find that it does tend to enhance the lines underneath my eyes just a tad bit more than I would like. I can totally make this one work for me and look good enough, but there's just other concealers that I like better. The plus with this one is you don't need a color corrector with it, because it is a beautiful full coverage product and it hides everything you need to hide underneath. I probably would like that one as a spot corrector more than I do as an under eye concealer. However, I'm not someone who tends to spot correct too much, so as I said, I just end up reaching for other products over that one. At number 11, I have the most affordable concealer I tried this year, and that is the Moira Mega Concealer. It is waterproof, it is full coverage, it has a nice creamy consistency. Again, not the thinnest. This one kind of reminds me of the Quickie concealer formula. So if you love the Quickie concealer formula and you want a more affordable option, definitely try the Moira Cosmetics Mega Concealer. I have it in the shade 150 Cream, which does absolutely work for me, and it is made in Korea. Moira Cosmetics makes her complexion products in Korea, which I absolutely love. So pretty much the same issues I had with the Quickie one. Matte finish, maybe a little too thick, maybe it makes my under eyes look just a tad bit dry, but overall I can make it work and I like it. It just does not wow me. It's not like my most favorite concealer in my collection by any means. I have others that I like just a little bit more. Moving on to the top 10, and on the 10th spot I have a very fancy concealer from Givenchy. This is the Prisme Libre Skin Caring Concealer, and I loved this one when I first tried it. I don't know what happened afterwards that I kind of changed my mind on it. So this one is a bit thinner than the previous two I mentioned, which is why I like it just a bit better than those. It has a fabulous medium buildable coverage, and it has a bit more of a natural finish rather than matte. So I understand why it's higher up in my collection. I understand why it's part of my top 10. Overall, I like it. I can make it work okay, but I feel like after wearing this one for a few hours, it can sometimes, not always, but sometimes crease underneath my eyes a little bit, which some of the other ones I have in front of it never do. And so for that reason, it's my number 10 rather than further up in my collection, but it's still a concealer that I reach for every once in a while. This is not one that goes forgotten in my collection because I do love the finish of it. I love the color that I got it on, which is Warm 110 or W110. It works for me. It's just, again, after wearing it for a few hours, I can sometimes see it creasing a little bit, and so of course that bothers me, which makes this one not an all-time favorite, but a good concealer within my makeup collection anyways. In the 9th spot, I have the new House Labs concealer. This one actually is one of the products I've liked most from the House Labs brand in general. I'm not the biggest fan of the brand. It has a creamy consistency, a matte finish, and a pretty full coverage. I have mine in 05 Fair Peach. Let me blend it here for you to see. See, this one has a bit more of a natural to matte finish rather than radiant. It's a bit less movable. It's a bit less liquidy, a bit more stiff, I almost want to call it. But it still blends out beautifully. I feel like I like this one better when I don't set it with any powder rather than when I set it with powder, because I find that this one with powder on top can look a bit thick underneath my eyes, but on its own it doesn't. However, on its own I do feel like it might crease just a bit after a few hours of use. Overall, not a bad concealer, just also not one of my top ones this year, but only because there's so many good ones that came out that are exactly what I love. Otherwise, I rated this one a really good score. I probably gave it a 9 or a 9 point something because it's a good concealer for my under eyes, just like the Givenchy one I just mentioned. It's just not perfect, and there's some others that I prefer because they check more of my boxes, you know? So let's keep going. At number 8, I have one that is very popular, and that is the Tarte Shape Tape Radiant Concealer. This one is pretty good. I really liked it. It's creamy. It is a bit more liquidy, a bit more watery, which I appreciate because I feel like those sink into my skin a little better. I have mine in the shade 20B Radiant. I love the radiant finish of this one. As I said, I prefer a radiant finish when it comes to my concealer. Now, it's not the thinnest formula. It is more liquidy than the ones I've shown you so far, which is why I like it better, but it's still not the thinnest formula. It's still a bit detectable underneath my eyes, and it can sometimes, after wearing it for a few hours, also look a bit more apparent, maybe crease a little bit. It's just not as flawless looking for as long of a period of time as some of the other ones I have in front of it. Overall though, I give it a pretty good score. It's a concealer that I still reach for quite often. I love the shade of it. I love the finish of it. But again, I just have others that are even more perfect for me, that I have even less trouble with them ever creasing or anything like that. And basically, I just have to rank them somewhere, okay? And so I like the ones remaining just a tad bit better than that one, but that doesn't mean that that one is bad. I do really like it. I think for the Tarte one, it simply comes down to it not being super thin and it actually being a bit more creamy, which, as I told you at the beginning of the video, makes my under eyes sometimes crease a little more. At my 7th spot, I have a very popular concealer that came out this year, and that is Miss Natasha Denona's High Glam Concealer. I have this one in two different shades. My other shade is way too yellow. This one is neutral 4, which does work for me. This one is very similar to the Tarte one I just showed you in the sense that it doesn't have the thinnest formula. It's a liquidy formula that blends right in, but it's a bit on the creamy side still. This one less than the Tarte one, which is why it's a bit higher in my ranking. I love the radiant finish. I love how natural this concealer looks. I honestly don't have much to complain about with this one. I don't find that it creases often, and it definitely never makes my under eyes look dry because it is a pretty hydrating concealer. Again, I just like the very thin liquidy ones best. There are two types of concealer I have in front of this one. Ones are concealers that you don't even have to set with powder because they are that creaseless, and the other ones are a little bit thinner, which I prefer to reach for, but I don't really have complaints about this one. I find it fantastic. It never makes my under eyes look dry, and it sinks right in. If I didn't set it with powder, this one would crease a little bit, but once you set it with powder, it looks flawless. I love it and I highly recommend it. However, I just have some other ones that I have been a little bit more impressed with. On the 6th spot, I have a very bougie concealer that I fell in love with at the beginning of the year, and that is this one right here from Tom Ford Beauty. This is the Tom Ford Traceless Soft Matte Concealer. I have mine in the shade 1C0 Silk, and I absolutely love this one. This is what it looks like on the back of my hand. Even though it's a stick concealer, it is creamy and it blends right in. It is creaseless under the eye. I can choose to set this one, or I can go without setting it, and it looks natural and it does not crease. It has a beautiful natural finish to it. Even though it's a cream product, it doesn't look too thick underneath my eyes. It lasts for a very long period of time on me. I guess the only thing that sets this one back a bit is that it has a natural finish rather than radiant. But with that said, it is a fabulous product. Great for on the go. This one travels fantastically well. It has a beautiful medium buildable coverage, and I absolutely love it. Nothing to complain about except maybe it's pricey because it's Tom Ford. And just like that, we've gotten to the top 5. Now, this next product was featured also in my foundation ranking because it is not necessarily exclusively a concealer, but I love it as concealer, so I have to put it in this video, and that is the MAC Studio Fix Everywhere Pen. This is the perfect concealer for people who wear concealer instead of makeup. It has a fantastic coverage. The tiniest bit of it goes a very long way. I could do both under eyes with that little tiny drop right there. It has a full coverage, a natural to matte finish, a fantastic consistency. It looks very natural. It sinks right into my skin, and my favorite thing about it is when I put this one underneath my eyes, I never have to set it with any powder because this does not crease. You know how I always complained that concealers claim to be creaseless but they all crease? Well, here's a product that is technically not a concealer, but you can actually put underneath the eyes and it won't crease at all. It is actually a creaseless product, and this one you can use underneath your eyes or all throughout the face. If you are someone who struggles with makeup settling into fine lines or wrinkles on your face, I highly recommend that you give this a try because it is just a fabulous creaseless product. It even works creaseless underneath the eyes, and I love it and I highly recommend it. Plus, it's so full coverage, you never need a color corrector with this one at all. The next 4 concealer products I'm going to mention to you are my favorite and also so very similar to one another. I'm not sure it's fair for me to name one my number 1 because I still use them interchangeably all the time, and I absolutely love each and every one of these. Each and every one of these has a medium coverage. I always wear them with a bit of a color corrector underneath, but I find them to look the most natural underneath my eyes because they are some of the thinnest concealers in my collection. So I find that they sink right into my skin and look undetectable. I do always have to set them with translucent powder, but even after setting them with translucent powder, they just make my under eyes look completely flawless. And so for all of those reasons I just mentioned, I love them, and for all of those reasons I just mentioned, they are my top favorite products. Even though they don't have the most coverage out of all of my concealers and I have to use them with a color corrector, I still find them to be the most flattering underneath my eyes, and I find them to be the most undetectable and the ones that just make it all look seamless under there. And so for, again, all of those reasons, they are my top ones. Starting with one that I cannot seem to stop using and that is the Very Valentino concealer. I have mine in shade LN3. You guys have seen me use this a million times here on my channel. I feel like I'm probably running out of it sometime soon because I can't stop using it. I love the shade of this one because it is radiant and it is very brightening and it just sinks right into the skin and it makes everything look seamless and bright and just beautiful. I do like to set it with a bit of translucent powder, but see how undetectable a concealer like this one looks on the skin? That is what I love about it. When I first tried the Very Valentino concealer, I didn't give it a great review because without a color corrector underneath, I don't like it as much. But I always wear a color corrector because I do have purpley hues underneath my eyes, and this is kind of the best brightening product you can put on top of a color corrector, and it just looks flawless and natural underneath my eyes, and I absolutely love it. At number 3, I have another one that I find to be fabulous, and that is the new Makeup by Mario concealer. I have mine in the shade 180, which is a perfect shade for me. And this one is, just as I'm going to mention with the remaining ones, a fantastic concealer because it has a radiant finish, a thin formula, it sinks right into the skin, it looks undetectable and brightening underneath the eyes, it blends right into the foundation, it is creaseless once I set it with a bit of translucent powder. I find that thin concealers, like the Very Valentino one I just mentioned, this Makeup by Mario one, I feel like them having a very thin consistency but still a medium coverage makes them work fantastic. Once you set them with translucent powder, makes them look creaseless, and they are hydrating and they never dry out your under eyes. They're just like fabulous in every single way, shape or form, okay? The one in the second spot, and I feel like second and one are kind of almost tied because I like them the best, but if I had to choose a 2 and a 1, I guess this is how I would do it, is the Tower 28 concealer right here. This is fantastic. It's so hydrating for the under eye area. I have mine in the shade, I think the shade is DTLA, but if it's not that, then I don't know. That's what it says at the bottom though. So this one, super thin, it's undetectable and creamy, it sinks right into the skin, it is brightening underneath my eyes, it has a fabulous texture with a beautiful radiant finish. Once you put a bit of translucent powder over it, it never creases, it never makes your under eyes look dull, you look hydrated and bright all throughout the day. The top 4 concealers I mentioned to you, so Very Valentino, Makeup by Mario, Tower 28, and the one that is remaining, all work amazingly, and I highly recommend them if you have dry skin or wrinkly under eyes, because once you set them with a very thin sheer veil of translucent powder, they are not going to crease, they are not going to budge, and because they're hydrating and they have this nice luminous finish, they are going to make your under eyes look hydrated and just simply flawless. I can promise you that. So lastly, at number 1, I put the new Gucci concealer because it is lovely. I love the packaging and I love the formula so much. It has very similar qualities again to what I've been telling you about, in the sense of having a thin consistency. I know I sound like a broken record, but a lot of them have the same properties. Thin consistency, radiant finish, sinks right into the skin, looks fabulous when set with the tiniest bit of translucent powder. It does not budge, it wears for a long time, it is creaseless, it is brightening, it is fantastic for dry skin, fantastic for lines and wrinkles, and it'll make your under eyes look simply flawless. I had such good luck this year when it came to new foundations coming out and new concealers coming out. I feel like a lot of what launched this year is what I usually look for in makeup. A lot of natural finish / radiant products that are hydrating and creaseless and thin and natural looking. This was a fabulous year when it came to concealer and foundation products, in my personal humble opinion. So I hope that you guys liked this ranking. The top 4 I could put as like my #1 favorite because I truly can't tell that much of a difference between them, but if I have to rank them somewhere, this is the way that I would rank them. So if you guys liked this video and found it helpful, don't forget to please give it a thumbs up before you leave. I love you all so much. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye.